Brian Seeling, welcome to Acquiring Minds.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Brian, you give a presentation to students at Sam Rosati's SM Boot Camp, where you actually were a student yourself. So Sam recommended you as a guest here. You bought PGM, a business that services commercial kitchen equipment. Classic example of the infinite niches in the world of small business. Let's start, Brian, with a little background on you, please.
Sure. Yeah. Again, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope your audience finds my story impactful. But I started my career in the IT space. I was, your traditional white collar worker. As a young kid, I always had a knack for entrepreneurship. I was the lemonade stand kid, and actually it was car washes that I found and dove into at a young age. I grew up in an apartment complex, and we had a little hose spigot there that you could wash your car at. And I decided one day that I wanted to make some extra money. There was a pair of Jordans that were coming out that I had to have. I was a freshman in high school. And obviously my parents didn't have the means to spend $180 on a pair of shoes. So I got a cardboard box, wrote on there car washes, $5, and went out there to the hose spigot and started selling car washes all summer.
And did you get the Jordans?
I did. I drugged my mother up to the mall once I had the $180 that I needed to buy the Jordans, and I waited in line at Foot Locker and I got the Jordans.
Well, an early success when you try something sure whets your appetite. It's all you feel like they're all going to be successes when the first time you try something works.
Yeah. Well, a lesson I learned later in life that they're always not successes, right? But there's always a lesson to be learned along the way. And but yeah, so that was my first real, I was 13, 14 at the time. Not old enough to work, but old enough to wash cars and to provide some value. And that's when I really learned that if you provide value to people, and in this case for car washes, you're providing a service, right? And you're providing that time. And so I went off to college, started my career in IT, and I spent almost 15 years in the IT field. I worked for various companies and organizations around the DC metro area. Worked for the Catholic Church. I worked for HP. I did some defense contracting as well. And at one point in time in my IT career, I said, you know what? I've worked for a lot of great people, and I've learned a lot of great things. I've also worked for a lot of bad people. And I think I can do things differently and better on my own. So I did. I stepped down on my own and started my own little service company. And
MSP, as we would call it.
Yeah, an MSP.
Managed service provider. So IT services to small businesses, right?
That's correct. Yep. So I turned that into a small shop that provided IT services to small businesses in my local community. I grew that to a decent amount. It wasn't anything to write home about necessarily, but taught me a lot along the way. I spent about almost 7 years doing that. Mm-hmm. And it got to the point where it was time for me to exit. I had a business partner, and I thought it was time for me to do something else. And he wanted to take over the reins, and so we separated. And I found myself actually not as an entrepreneur again, but at a software startup for about a year and a half. And something that just kind of fell in my lap. Somebody was looking for, something that I could provide them from a technology perspective. And I joined that startup, and spent about a year and a half there. And during that time, I had that yearn to do my own thing again, I was an executive, part of that team, but I wasn't a founder, and I wasn't the one really making the decisions and pointing the company in the direction, or, I was more, for lack of a better term, I was just, a worker, so to speak. Right. And so the itch was getting back quickly, and I needed to do something else. And I knew I didn't want to start something from scratch, because I'd been down that road before, and that road can be challenging, for the first year, or until you get that first $1 million worth of revenue, or heck, even $3-5 million worth of revenue. It's just, it's tough.
Brian, how much revenue did you get the MSP to at the end?
It was just shy of 5 million.
Oh, wow. Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
And also at this point in the story, you have a decently sized family, right?
Yeah. So at this point now, I've left the MSP and I'm at the software startup, the SaaS startup, and I think we were on baby number 4, somewhere in that range, right?
In that range.
So yeah, so
give or take a baby.
Give or take a kid or two. Yeah, but I just wasn't in the position to do what I did initially with the MSP. Start from scratch in a buddy's garage, making the first year I was at the MSP, I made no money.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
And that's some of the sacrifices you have to make when you have a startup, unless you have, a big chunk of capital sitting in the bank, and even that can still be can be really risky. Well,
this is, of course, one of the most practical reasons for ETA is that there is salary to be had immediately.
Absolutely. Yep. 100%. And at the time we were still living up in Northern Virginia, and my wife and I had always talked about moving south, getting to warmer climates. And so it kind of coincided with our move out of the DC metro area down into Florida, Tampa, which is where we're at now. So I was searching and looking for a business to buy, but also looking for a city and a community to plant my family in.
Yeah. And Brian, not wanting to start something from scratch, but wanting to return to be an entrepreneur, certainly understand that path. But the idea of buying a business, were you seeing stuff online? Did you know somebody who'd done it? Did you always understand that it was possible? Because for a lot of people, it's a revelation that it's even possible.
No, yeah, I had no exposure to M&A or acquisitions at all. Even at my MSP, I heard a thing or two about it, but everything that I was told, which hindsight now is 2020, right? Looking back, it's like, man, I should have been gobbling up other companies along the way, right? But a guy that was a mentor to me back in my MSP days was like, man, don't carry the extra debt. You can grow the business yourself, right? Without bringing on that extra debt, right? So if you're doing your sales and marketing correctly, you'll have no problem getting to the goals you're trying to get to. So I then tabled that whole idea of acquisition and then never looked at it again.
Well, how do you reflect on his advice now, by the way?
I mean, I think there's a strategy to implement both. I think you can grow organically, but I think now in PGM, it's like, yes, we can grow organically, but there's going to be a time where acquisition is going to be part of our growth strategy, 100%.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think, of course, too, it's very industry dependent. It depends a lot on whether or not organic or inorganic is the right way.
Yeah.
Carry on. Great. You start looking in Florida with the idea that you're going to move there. You start looking while you're still in Northern Virginia, or you move and start searching. What's all that look like?
Yeah. So it wasn't until I came across, I don't know, some social media posts, and I came about a book called Buy Then Build. So I didn't actually read the HBR.
We know it.
Okay. Buy Then Build, right? I was like, yeah, why not just buy another business? I got some capital in the bank, and let's just do that. Why would I start one from scratch again? Like this whole light bulb went off in my head, and then like I do with most things, I dove into it, head first to try to figure it out, and I just started looking at
Biz buy sell.
Biz buy sell at businesses that were out there for sale, right? And just started looking and eventually reaching out to brokers, not knowing what I was talking about or what I was doing, by the way. So
give us a little bit on the search. Now, you're Florida based. You want to buy something, we assume in Florida. You mentioned capital, that you had a balance sheet. What were some of the parameters of the size? Fill it out for us, because I think this is a core chunk of your presentation at SM Boot.
Yeah, so I knew what I wanted in the business was obviously location. It needed to be somewhere in the South, right? It didn't necessarily have to be in Florida. It could have, South Carolina would have been fine. Georgia would have been okay. But it needed to be in the South. It needed to be scalable, right? That was important to me. So when I say scalable, like not franchise based and nothing that was locked into a territory. Like I needed to be able to grow it, and not have any boundaries or anything, stopping me from growing the company. So that was one. I wanted to have some level of management in place that I wouldn't lose when I acquired the company. That was important, right? Because I didn't want to go into a new industry and have to learn every nuance about that industry in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah,
like, that just wasn't going to work. Because I was switching from white collar IT to blue collar. Like I wanted the blue collar business, and a lot of people ask me, "Oh, why didn't you get back into IT?"
Yeah,
and my answer to that is, one, the multiples on those businesses are more than I was willing to pay, and two, I just don't know what AI is going to do to that business, specifically MSPs.
mm-hmm.
And the way technology has developed in such a way that if you're a generalist, you can figure out most IT issues. It isn't like it was 25 years ago where you needed to call an IT professional to actually fix the problem. Like for the most part, things are kind of, I don't want to say set it and forget it in IT, but they can be. So you kind of have to move upstream to those more complex customers. And with me moving to a new location, like I don't know, I didn't want to do that work anymore. I wanted something different, and I wanted to be in the blue collar space. Something that,
and so that you've said why you stayed away from MSPs, but why there are other businesses that are not blue collar that are also not MSPs. It sounds like you not only didn't want to do MSPs, but were drawn to blue collar. Why?
Yeah. I just thought that I could provide a lot of value to a blue collar business. You have a technician, and typically what happens is a technician leaves a company that he's worked for a long period of time, goes off on his own, starts his own company, does really good work, has to hire a couple other technicians, right? Grows the business to 5 or 6 techs, maybe 10. And at that point, they don't know how to scale the business beyond that. And if I could find a company that was at that point, I knew I could come in and provide the value from a back office and growth and technology perspective to get it to that 25, 50, 100 technician, size company. So for me,
and what were the skills that you saw yourself bringing, Brian, to a 10, 15 person tech business, and then scaling it?
So a lot of that, just process, procedure, and some basic stuff like just, having a domain name that matches your email address, right? You think that's crazy, but some of those simple things like phones, how phones is all the back office process that a typical technician wouldn't even care about, doesn't even think about, but are so critical to scale your business. You need those processes and systems in place in order to take yourself to the next level. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing your tail. So I thought I've been there. I've done that before. I had a good idea of how to do that, in a blue collar, because it's all the same. Business, 70% of all business is the same. The other 30% is those nuances to that particular industry in that sector. I had the 70%. I just needed to learn the 30%.
So the idea of kind of a culture shift between white and blue collar didn't bother you. No. I heard you say in the pre-call, you were like, in the MSP business, it was, it was me managing, IT people, teams of IT techs.
Sure.
And in a blue collar business, it would be me managing whatever the trade tech is.
Yeah.
Say, tastes like chicken.
Yeah. Yeah. It pretty much is the same. Now, the technicians on the blue collar side tend to be a little bit more rough around the edges, but I mean, it didn't bother me none, right? I can mix it up with those guys, every day of the week. So it didn't bother me to get my hands dirty a little bit either too. So
great. Okay. And then can you say more about the numbers, what you could afford, kind of your target business?
Yep. So naive me was under the impression I can get away with putting 10% down, right? Because that's what they all talk about, all the talking heads in social media. Oh, just put 10% down. You could own your own business. So my expectations were probably a little higher than that. I was aiming for like around a $5 million purchase.
Oh.
And to keep this part of the story short, I ended up having to put down a little bit more equity or a little bit more capital into the business from a down payment perspective than I first sought than I first realized. And so it brought down my expectations a little bit, right? So I was aiming for, somewhere between $2 and $3 million purchase price. And actually I bought the company for even less than that. So.
Wait, sorry, Brian. You went out thinking you might be able to buy a $5 million business.
Yeah.
10% down so that you could put $500,000 into the business.
Yeah.
And then you bought smaller but more equity into the business. I missed that piece. What were you saying?
Right. So I bought smaller because that's
the deal that presented itself.
I had in front of me.
Yeah.
That's the deal I had in front of me. And I was okay with going a little lower than that. But whenever you switch industries, the banks, or at least the bank that I was working with, had some red flags for that, right? So going from white collar to blue collar, no industry experience. Florida, there's all kinds of licensing requirements for HVAC, and like we carry a gas license now. I'm the sole provider for my family, so there was just a lot of other aspects that from a risk perspective that required me to put more money down and not just the 10%. So then lowered my expectations as far as purchase price.
I see. So you were still prepared to put in $500,000.
Yeah.
But it was going to need to represent a larger percentage of the business, therefore a smaller business, to mitigate the risks as the lender saw it.
Correct.
Did you put a full $500,000 into your acquisition ultimately?
No, I did not. No.
Okay.
No, because it took me about a year to close on the company. And at the time I wasn't working. So obviously that came down a little bit, but yeah, I still had to put, a decent amount down. But it all worked out. So.
Okay. Anything more to say about the search process itself, or should we turn our attention to the business itself that you bought?
One thing that I'll say is yes. And people never believe me when I say this. I found it on Biz Buy Sell, and it was the first business that I reached out to a broker about.
I love it.
And
I've heard that a time or two.
Yeah,
and it's just magic when it happens.
Yeah, and now that doesn't mean I didn't inquire about other businesses, and I probably looked at, 30, 40 sims along the way. Because the deal, it did die a couple times, right? There was some turbulence, and again, it took me 11 months to get it from the first day I saw it to closing. But it, first thing I looked at, first broker I reached out to, and got the deal closed. So,
and anything to say about those 11 months? There must have been quite a bit actually that you learned through that turbulence.
Yeah, I can do it again a lot faster and a lot better. I could tell you that, right?
What did you do wrong the first time around?
Well, I didn't have, and then one of the things that Sam's boot camp teaches you is to have a deal team in place, right? Have the right attorney, have the right banker. Well, I wouldn't even say banker. I would find a capital advisor, right? If you're really serious about buying a company, get a capital advisor and typically a capital advisor will have a whole briefcase full of banks that they use. It can get your deal to the right bank, right, to get your deal closed. And I was in a position where I want to say I got boxed into the bank I was using, but I probably could have found some better options when it came to actually financing the deal. But I was so far down the rabbit hole with this bank that if I were to try to switch banks, it would have killed the deal, right? So deal team is important, right?
And when you say capital advisor, Brian, you mean like a loan broker, like an SBA loan broker,
like a loan, like someone that provides a service, right? A loan broker that can find the right bank for your deal.
Yep.
And because I was naive, I thought all SBA lending was the same, and it is not the same.
Yeah,
it is not. So
great. And by the way, you did SM boot camp after already having the business under LOI, right? Isn't that the?
Well, I wouldn't say I had it under LOI. What happened was it was under LOI, and then the deal fell apart, and so it fell apart because of price. So what happened? We got through the phase. I got through my Q of E, and the business was actually not producing the kind of revenue. The kind of SDE that was initially conveyed to me via the SIM. And so I went back and said, hey, I'm not comfortable paying this sales price because you're off by about 20%, 25%. It was kind of crazy, the number. And so the deal died. And so I'm like, you know what? I don't know if this deal's going to come back around. Clearly, I need some more education on this. And it just so happened S&B boot camp had a boot camp coming up in 3 weeks. So I jumped right into it. Yeah. So it just happened to be like perfect timing. I was like, you know what? I probably need to go meet some people, network with some people, meet the right people to make sure that I'm getting the deal done correctly in my best interest. Yeah. And so that's what I did. So I ended up going to boot camp, but then during boot camp, the seller came back to the table. We started negotiating, and then at the end of boot camp, the deal was back under LOI. So,
tell us about the business and kind of the numbers around it and what the terms of the acquisition were.
Yeah. So, PGM does, as you mentioned before, commercial kitchen equipment repair, maintenance, installation. Had been around since 2008, so it had a really good customer base. Well known in Tampa, well known in the industry. And it was doing about $2.6 million in top line revenue when I acquired the company. And
can you say what the SDE was, or
the
margins
SDE was
were?
right around just above $500,000.
Wow, $2.5 million in revenue for a business that services the kitchens of restaurant, the equipment in the kitchens of restaurants in a single market.
In a single market, yep.
Riches in the niches.
Yeah, and we only, and it's even more niche because we don't do, at least when I bought the company, we don't do all kitchen equipment. We only do hot side. So in the world of commercial kitchen equipment, there's hot and cold. So cold side, your refrigeration, right? Your walk-ins, your reach-ins, your ice machines, anything that keeps things cool inside the kitchen. We don't touch that. It's only hot side.
Yeah.
So it's even more niche than that. So again, I saw another area of potential growth by adding that into our service catalog, right? Is getting into the cold side. So with 7 technicians, including the owner at the time, had a GM, office manager, I guess you can call him, in place that wasn't the owner.
Wait, Brian, a GM, but an office manager. My view of those titles is pretty different. That office manager is doing stuff around the office, but GM is actually managing the crews, the techs. So what did this person, what were they doing?
He did everything. He did all that.
He did.
He did all that.
Yeah, okay.
He was a one-man wrecking crew, right? He did it all, right? And he had some support. He had a part-time person that was coming in and running parts for him and doing some of the parts management, but that was it. So he was the GM, right? Yeah, he was a GM, back off, you name it. He did everything, went through him.
And what was the owner doing? Was the owner pretty hands-off then?
Yeah, the owner was a tech. He was out in the field running calls.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So again, with that setup, I didn't lose, or I didn't have to scramble to learn as much about the business in a short period of time.
Right.
All right.
Just what you wanted.
Yeah. As long as and one of my criteria was, hey, who are the other techs? How senior are they? And can they replace you, seller, in the field? Because he was the senior guy. All the other techs, whenever they had issues or problems or concerns, they would raise those issues up to the seller from a technical perspective, right?
Yep.
And so I needed somebody to replace him, and I identified 2 individuals in the business that were able to do that, and one of them has done that now. So it worked out well. So
it worked out.
That was the only risk there was losing him in the field. But in the back office, the GM, he was running the show, and it allowed me to land softly into this new industry.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna want to return to that point when we get there. But anything more? So, and what was the business selling for? Let's get back to the transaction itself. So $500,000 of SDE. What was it on sale? What was it selling for?
It was 1.8.
Okay, that's what it was on Biz Buy Sell for originally, or that's what you ultimately bought it for?
That's what it was on sale for originally.
And then
I paid 1.64 for it.
1.64.
Yep.
So great. So just above a 3x multiple.
Like a 3-1. Yeah. 3-1, which I was comfortable with that ratio.
And then how was this structured, returning to the equity you put in, the SBA loan, et cetera? What'd that look like?
So SBA loan covered, I forget what the percentage was off the top of my head, but it was somewhere around 1.25 million in the SBA loan. And then the rest was covered by myself. And then I brought in an investor actually to then finish filling the gap for me.
Okay. And no seller note.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. There was a seller note, a small seller note, 10%.
Okay.
Yep.
So about 75% from SBA, if it was at 1.2.
Yep.
10% from the seller note. So you and the investor bring 15%, which is, 240.
It was a little bit more than that because then I also financed another $100,000 in working capital in there too.
With your own cash. You put $100,000 on the balance sheet.
Yeah, on the balance sheet. So we ended up putting in, it was closer to 350 between myself and my equity partners.
Great. And to this point that the lender wanted you to mitigate some of the risk, you being in a new industry, you coming from white collar, moving into blue collar, et cetera, that you talked about, and them wanting to see more equity in the deal, wasn't dramatically more. It went from, because you're still only at 15% as opposed to 10. So it's not that much more, but that's what they needed you to do to get comfortable. So I had that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And Brian, you had said that you could have put $500,000 of your own money into this, but instead it's ended up being 350, but with investors.
Yeah.
Why did you bring in investors?
Well, for one, I didn't want to
clear yourself out.
I wanted to be comfortable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And two, after going through Sam's boot camp, I thought to myself, it'd probably be best if I could bring in somebody that I could bounce ideas off of, or if I run across any kind of issues or concern, whatever, somebody else that wasn't me that I would have to then help support me along the way. And two, if I wanted to really take this business to the next level, I'm going to need potentially more capital. And wouldn't it be nice to have a partner that has access to capital, right? To then, allow me to acquire other companies if that's the path we want to go down. So it made too much sense not to do it. And I was willing to give up a little bit of that equity to do so.
Can you name who the investor was, or is it obvious?
Yes,
is
I
it
want to
obvious
give
who
them a shout out. Capital Pad. Yep. Those guys over there did a great job of helping me along the way. And if you're looking to raise some capital inside of your business, please reach out to Capital Pad. They're awesome over there. So, and I think I was their first investment too. So, which was kind of cool.
Okay. Yeah. So you were looking for a business with some kind of management or manager, so that you weren't going to have to get into the technicalities of a industry that you didn't yet know. In addition to learning how to own a business. You find it in PGM that has a GM/office manager who's kind of running the business. And when you then get into it, does that mean you're able to work, on the business rather than in the business from day one? Does it work out as cleanly as you'd hoped?
It did, actually. It did. And, as I mentioned earlier, it did give me a nice soft landing inside the business. I didn't have to struggle to learn a new industry and, a 4-week period or whatever, is typical for a seller to provide training to a buyer. So yeah, it worked out well and allowed me to make some immediate changes and some immediate fixes, like having a standardized email address for everybody. Right. And it sounds so simplistic, but that was one thing that we needed to fix, was just communication internally and externally. Not only with our customers, but with our vendors. Everyone had their own personal email address, and things were going all over the place. And from a business perspective, you have no control on that. You have no control over someone's personal email. And there's potentially confidential information that's going to those personal email accounts. So not to beat a dead horse, but that was a change that I was able to make, was just get some things standardized right from the beginning.
And was that just a question of everybody gets on G Suite sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, I'm a Microsoft guy, so don't kill me for that. But so everything on Office 365 and everyone, with mobile devices that are managed by the company, getting the cell phones and the iPads, consistent with logins and email accounts, and just all that stuff that I'd done for years that I could just hop in and just knock it out. Right. The GM was manually forwarding the office analog phones to his cell phone every night. So when he would leave every day at 2:00, because he would get in super early, he'd leave at 2:00. He would forward the phones, star 67, dial the number for each analog line, and forward the phones to his cell phone. And that's just how he did it for 10, 15 years, right? And so never had a reason to change it. So when I came in, I changed that. Like, no, we're going to get a real phone system. We're going to get a answering service, and you're not going to have to do this every day. We're going to get, an IVR and extensions and all those things that make us appear like we're a $30 million business, but we're not.
Yep. Professionalization. 101.
Yep. 100%.
Did you find, Brian, any pushback to this?
Oh, of course.
Right? Oh, well, so tell us.
It wasn't bad pushback. It was just change.
Yeah. Right.
And into his defense, he had been doing just fine before I got there. Right. So I try to step carefully. So what I didn't come in like a wrecking ball and saying, we're changing all this stuff today. Like, no, it wasn't a wholesale fire sale type of change. I just little wins, as the weeks went on. I said, okay, first thing I'm going to do is email. That's important. I'll worry about the phones later. 2 months later, we did the phones. All right, let's talk about the phones. I worked with the GM. Like, I'm going to make this change. This is why I'm going to make it. There was some grumbling about it, but he got on board. And then he actually came back around like a month later. It was really nice not having to answer the phones at 7:00 at night.
Well, Brian, this strikes me as one of those where the change you make is like, look, this is going to improve your life.
Yeah,
sir. I mean, you're no longer going to have phone calls when you go home at night. Isn't that enticing?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also too, again, he had been running the business in that shop for 10 plus years, before I got there. So there was a little bit of control that you let go of too. And again, I didn't want to come in and call his baby ugly, right? I didn't want to do that. And even though I was a new owner, I still wanted to do things tactfully.
And well, actually, great call out and dynamic there to explore, because if the owner had been a technician and basically let this gentleman run the back office and run the business, you as new owner are going to be running the business. So in some ways, he's going to continue to do operational stuff, but you're going to make these other back office decisions, changes. And so you're definitely going to be encroaching on what he perceived as his territory, his turf. No,
sure, yeah, 100%.
And so there was, in fact, there was a little bit of tension from time to time on that.
Yeah, there was, and it wasn't a personal thing. It was just change, right? And he'd been in the industry for 40 years. Like he was, I don't want to say stuck in his ways, but when you've been doing something one way, for so long, and you don't want to change anything. It just felt awkward for him and weird. He just, which I respected it. Yeah. But if I wanted to move the business forward and I wanted to achieve my goals, we had to make some of these basic changes before we even talked about hiring more techs or bringing on more manufacturers to do warranty work for, or going after larger customers or larger franchise groups. Like, no, we got to stop thinking like a small business and start thinking and operating like a big business. Yep. Because billionaires do business with billionaires. Like, this is how it works.
And that particular point, was that well received? That like, hey guys, let's shift our thinking here a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was. I mean, again, he understood it. He wasn't. The points didn't miss him. It just he was wanted to grumble about the change. So it's fine.
yeah. But you are also talking about not just change. Not just kind of tactical changes. You're also talking about a whole kind of culture change a little bit. Like we're going to aspire here and push ourselves and make this a bigger company and kind of aim higher. And so that represents something more a deeper change than simply no more star 67. We're putting in a phone system. It's something more essential than that. And did you? So these kind of professionalization stuff is great. Anything more to say on those? But what I really also want to hear is, were there any changes that you made that were revenue generating, like new sales or calling people back faster sort of stuff? Anything where you move the needle on the finances?
Yes and no, right? So I say that because from a service perspective, the business was operating well, right? Were we leaving some meat on the bone? Yeah. And I saw that early on. But in order to make that change, you need the workforce to do it. So it wasn't anything immediate that I within the first 6 months I was able to do. It wasn't until after I got some of these systems in place that we were able to then start to look at some other services that we can provide, like PMs, so preventive maintenance. And that's something that we did. Like 5% of our top line was PMs, but it could be much more than that. And it has become much more than that. Here in the last 6 months or so, we're doing more PMs because we now have technicians that focus on doing PMs, right? Because our normal techs, or not normal techs, our experienced techs, I should say, they like going in, doing the repairs, collecting the money, and then moving on to the next repair. PMs are a little bit more time consuming, and they don't generate as much revenue. And our technicians are paid commission every month too. Right. So which I saw as a great part of the business that sets us apart from our competitors even, is that we allow our hungry, want to grow technicians to make more money if they're out there closing more business, solving more problems for customers. They can pretty much make as much money as they want. So,
and is that compensation model, so that you're saying that is pretty uncommon? First somebody's talking about it. So can you give us more detail and help the audience think about that if they look at a blue collar business?
Yeah. So what they do is, and at least on the commercial, and I don't know how it is on the residential side. So for home services business, I do think there is some commission, and some companies do pay commission, but at least for commercial services, I haven't been able to find any competitor that has anything similar. So we pay our guys a little bit below scale, maybe 10% below scale, but they get a commission every month based on their total sales revenue for the month. And they have a goal anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000 in sales. And when they hit that $30,000 in sales, they get a percentage of that total sales. Then at 35, they get another percentage, a higher percentage of those sales. And so that does two things. One, it keeps our techs motivated and hungry, but it also rewards the guys that are out there closing work orders, being efficient and effective, with their calls, and the ones that maybe want to work a little overtime or don't mind grabbing an on-call weekend here and there, right? So, and the ones that don't like commission typically aren't the ones that, I don't want to say you don't want them to work for you, but they're not as hungry. They just want to come in and be average. And I'm looking for above average people within the organization. And so they already had that because the commissions, this was already in place from the previous owner. So I didn't change. I thought this was great. This is a great idea, right? And something that he implemented a long time ago to keep his guys motivated and hungry.
Yeah. Fantastic. Brian, you mentioned that earlier in the conversation that when you were at the startup, you didn't feel like the entrepreneur, like the principal, like the founder, because it wasn't your business, versus how in the MSP you had felt that. Here, you're not the founder. You bought the business, but does it scratch the itch? Does it feel like it's your business?
Yeah, I think for me, it's all about the vision and then having people on board to help you support that vision. Like having people that I can lead, that I can help grow, that I can nurture, and as the business grows, we all grow together. And so I think that was more valuable to me, and then what I wasn't getting at the SaaS startup that I did have at the MSP. Right, I was able to bring somebody in at the MSP that had little to no experience in IT, and then able to guide them on their career path to then achieve the goals that they wanted to achieve, both inside and outside the organization. So at PGM, no, I'm not the founder. I didn't start the company, but I'm able to provide that same value to those inside the organization, which is really what I enjoy doing at my core, is being able to provide that value, to individuals. So
a lot of guests I've had, Brian, find to their surprise that one of the most rewarding things about this path is helping their people grow.
Yeah.
But they didn't get into it for this. It sounds like you had enough experience already to know that is one of the things that's so rewarding here. And in fact, it was one of your key things.
Yeah, that drives me, man. I if I can bring somebody in, I got a guy that started. He was probably my second hire after I bought the company. He was just a chef or a short order cook, so to speak, right? Working at just a random restaurant. We were able to bring him in, and over the last year and a half, grow him to a technician, right? So he's learned a new skill, a new trade, and something that he can carry outside of PGM, right? One day, if that day comes. And that to me is the most rewarding part of it. Sure, the revenue is all great and fun, but that for my core is being able to do that. Take somebody that maybe didn't have a career path or didn't have the guidance or didn't have the mentor to kind of show them a pathway, and be able to provide them that pathway. Because I didn't have that growing up, right? And that's part of the reason why I was, doing car washes at a young age, was I didn't know, or I didn't have anyone to show me a pathway and a career pathway. I had to figure it out on my own. Even when I got into IT, I was kicking and scratching trying to figure it out. But having that mentor or having somebody that cares enough to say, hey, this is how you go down the yellow brick road, right? It's up to you to walk it. So
we talked in the pre-call, Brian, about how you retain talent. I feel like we're talking about it. This is how. But anything else to add to how it is? Because as you also said in our first conversation, this is not a trade where there's formal training.
No,
this is you can't go take a course on fryer repair or whatever. So it becomes a little bit more difficult. So talent is scarcer, right?
Yeah, especially on the hot side. So a lot of times the refrigeration. So a lot of larger companies that do both cold and hot, they'll bring people in on the refrigeration side and then train them on hot side stuff, right? But there is no official refrigeration school or HVAC school to go to for hot side or for gas in general, right? Now, you can go take some online courses for it, right? And there is a gas license that you have to acquire, but there is no formal trade school that you can go to work specifically in this niche field. No. So most of the people that we either got to grab them from another company that are already working in the field, or we got to train them from nothing to something. And that's what the seller had done traditionally. He grew it to those 7 technicians, but he individually trained each one of those guys himself over a course of a year to a year and a half before he then put them in their own van and then sent them off to start making money for him.
Wow.
And now, obviously, that isn't necessarily a path that works for growth quickly, right? I can't do that today and scale it, right? But there is a pathway to, have some of that mixed into how we grow and add technicians to the business.
That's really interesting. I mean, on the one hand, it sounds unscalable. On the other hand, if you can get somebody up to speed in a year or a year and a half, that's actually quite a bit less time than in straight HVAC or plumbing, right?
Yeah, sure. But typically those guys, and I learned this from my trade school buddies, is that the guys that are in like year 2 of trade school to year 4, that's where the companies are making the most money on those individuals, because they're doing the same work just with oversight from somebody that's a 4 or 5 year person, right? That's already gone through schooling, right? But they're doing the same work, billing the same amount for those year 2 guys. Right? And so that's where they're really making a lot of money, because they're doing the same work. They're just not paying them as much, but they just have, again, the oversight of that senior tech. There's ways to make it work, obviously, and there is a need for it. But again, I think also, and that's the tricky part for us growing wise, is we got to make sure we're bringing in the right people that believe what we believe and that operate the way we operate, because those technicians, they are the face of PGM when they're out there. When they're going to see the customer, when they're walking into that kitchen, when they're going to see the GM of the restaurant or whatever, they PGM shirt on, they are the face of the company. And so if they're not committed to their job, if they're not committed to their career, if they're not committed into helping us grow the business, they're probably not going to do a good job, and it's going to reflect poorly on us and our performance.
Yep. And have you found your new kind of orientation for the business, that, professionalizing it and aiming higher to be well received by them, the field techs?
Oh yeah. They
have you noticed a difference?
I wouldn't say a difference, so to speak, but they're definitely. So after I did hear some feedback, probably about 3 or 4 months into the acquisition, that the techs seemed more energized, right? Good change was coming, right? They actually had more of a path to, okay, how do I become more than just a mid-level technician? How do I become a senior tech? How do I become a master tech? Is there a path for me to be a field supervisor, or even a manager, or even to take over and manage a whole territory? Like, is that path there for me? And so being able, like we talked about earlier, setting that path and giving them that opportunity totally changed their perspective on their career. Because maybe they don't want to turn a wrench for the next 20 years. Maybe they do want to get into some office work, or maybe a supervisor role, or maybe learn more about leadership and how to be a good leader and help those the same way you were helped. And so I think that's what really helped energize, I should say, the technicians, plus some of the other things that made their life a little easier, out in the field. So,
well, Brian, to provide a pathway like that, to be a territory manager, that means that PGM itself has to get quite a bit bigger.
Yeah, sure.
Because
right.
I guess those roles don't yet exist. So let's turn our attention now to growth and how you grow a business like this. I heard you talk about what do you call it? The PM, preventive maintenance, and growing that side of the business, which is lower revenue, but I assume higher quality revenue. That's recurring. Wouldn't that be recurring revenue?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So typically in its core, emergency service. That's what we provide. That's what PGM was really good at. Like same day or next day service, whenever you called, and that can be kind of scary for someone coming from an MSP world or from an MSP environment where everything was recurring. We didn't have any break-fix customers. Everybody was on some level of contract. So the revenue was guaranteed. Well, I wouldn't say guaranteed, but pretty close to guaranteed every month.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
In this business, it's if the phones aren't ringing, we're in trouble. Right. So,
and on that point, Brian, of course, recurring revenue is the holy grail. Do you find that your business, the revenue quality, feels lesser than that MSP revenue?
No, because the things that balance this out is there's more competition in the MSP industry. So yes, the revenue may be guaranteed for a contract period, but it doesn't mean they're not shopping around once that contract's about to expire, because there's lots of options out there for them. Typically in this space, I found that there's less competition, and two, they don't like to switch companies, because if they get bad service, it affects their bottom line, right? And so it's less likely for someone to switch and not call us once we get in there.
Yeah. And the idea of, revenue just hitting the bank account automatically every month versus here, you're only as good as your next phone call. Do you feel confidence that the phone's just going to keep ringing?
Yeah, I mean, it has up until this point. So, yeah, no, but again, we put some stuff in place, from a marketing perspective. So we boosted that up a little bit, and we put some dollars into that area. We have some really great customers that are long-term customers that we make sure we take care of, and that represent a good quality portion of our revenue. So, I don't have any concerns, because typically, your small single mom and pop restaurant, they may only call you once or twice a year, right? And so we have 4,000 of those in our database of customers.
Yeah.
Right. And then we have our customers that are larger, like your franchise organizations that, that call us all the time. So if your business model historically was break and fix, the mom and pops, those 4,000 mom and pops that only call you when they need you, which is only twice a year, how do you increase revenue from those customers? By providing those, saying, hey, we're offering preventive maintenance now? There you go. So what we do is and to stay sticky with those customers, we have a preventive maintenance program that I call a preferred membership program, actually. And what that gets them is priority service. It gets them discount on our labor and parts, and it gets them any level of PMs either once a year, twice a year, or 4 times a year. So based on what they need or what makes sense from them, for their situation, budgetary wise, they can then sign up for that. And that keeps us in the account. It keeps us sticky. And typically when we go into a PM, there's other things we find that are wrong that we can then upsell to the customer.
Yep. Yeah. And so has this worked? Has there been uptake of this offering, this new offering?
Yeah. We actually just pushed this out this summer, right? So this is somewhat new over the last 3 months, and it's been received well so far. So yeah, we're ramping up, so to speak. Yep.
Okay. And speaking of ramping up, back to growth. So how do you envision growing a business like this? You've already said one thing, this new offering, the PM offering. What else?
So there's other avenues. The one thing that PGM doesn't really have a lot of is manufacturers that we provide warranty work for. So another way to grow and to get into certain accounts is by way of the manufacturer. So manufacturer A sells a piece of equipment. It's under warranty for a year, sometimes 2-3 years. That piece of equipment breaks. They need to send out a service company to then fix that piece of equipment. Right. And so they call those ASAs. And so those, if you're an ASA for a manufacturer, they typically feed you work, so to speak. Right. Because they don't have the bandwidth or the operational ability to have technicians across the country. So what they do is they go out and find ASA. So there's lots of manufacturers of commercial kitchen equipment. And so we had like 4 or 5 that we did warranty service work for, but there's probably 150 that we could do warranty service work for. So now we're up to about 15, and I'm hoping to continue to grow that, because that will then obviously not only does it help from a revenue perspective, but it also gets us into some accounts that we didn't have access to previously.
Yeah, sure. You'd mentioned before to me about expanding your solution from hot side to cold side as well. Mm-hmm. So all the half of the kitchen that goes to preservation and refrigeration.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother, and that's a whole nother section. And we have our customers, we have some customers now that are asking us to get into the refrigeration side, but it's a little bit more, it takes a little bit more time to do that and a little bit more investment. So one step at a time, right? And as I mentioned earlier, I'm not trying to bite off more than we can chew. We're not a $10 million company that we can just throw resources at. So I have to be, again, tactful with how we grow as well. So step one is obviously the PM programs, or actually step one was, let's find some more manufacturers we can do work for. Mm-hmm. Let's improve the service that we're offering our current customer base, right, on the hot side. And now let's offer a secondary service to them in cold side service. Right, so we're going through the phase of the PMs. I happen to actually I just hired a guy that actually knows cold side and hot side. So I have someone in the hopper that can hop into the cold side as soon as we start doing that work. So I'm super excited about that. But again, it's cold side's a whole nother thing. And so we got to be prepared. And I don't want to disrupt our hot side service by offering bad cold side service. Right. So I don't want to upset customers because we do a crappy job at something we shouldn't be doing. And I learned that in the MSP in my MSP days, right? Because when you do technology, especially small businesses, they think that you can do everything, like website design and phone systems. And so we did that. We did that. And we did a crappy job at those things. And I had to pull the plug on it because we would then put a sour taste in the customer's mouth across all of our services. Even though we did IT service fine, we did a crappy job doing websites, right?
Yeah.
So it, and as much as you want that revenue, you can't do that. And so I learned that the hard way. And I'm not going to do that here at PGM. One bite at a time. If we add services, let's make sure we're doing it well. And we have our ducks in a row as best we can before we start providing that service.
Yeah. Great. And then finally, what about, we've been talking about upselling and expanding your offerings to existing customers. What about customer acquisition, new customers in Tampa or beyond, buying competitors or just growing organically? How does all that look?
Yeah, so we definitely acquired some new companies or some new logos, I should say, either by word of mouth or actually I don't want to say the name because I just keep that close to vest, but we had somebody reach out to us that oversees a brand name that has 80 locations throughout the Tampa metropolitan area, and he reached out because he saw one of our vans going down the highway.
Amazing. So it works. Sticking your phone number on a van works.
It does. It still works 100%. Right. And so he gave me a call. I said, man, I didn't know you guys existed. So I gave him the backstory and so we're getting set up for that account and so we can service those 80 locations, which is huge. And so, those little simple changes can go a big way.
Yeah.
All right. Huge way. And so, yeah, we were able to acquire some of those. And then we've had some customers that have acquired some other restaurants. We've gotten into some other, cause we do hospitals, we do convenience stores, we do hotels and convention centers, anything that's got a commercial kitchen inside of it. We've probably been inside. We touched it.
Yeah.
There's a cruise ship here in Tampa, done that. We do their work from time to time. So yeah, it's,
Well, when you put it that way, yeah, you realize that there are commercial kitchens everywhere.
Yeah.
So to this point about this being a niche business, $2.6 million in revenue when you bought it in a single market, how big do you think you could get it in Tampa alone before you look to further territories and without expanding to refrigeration? So just the services you already offer in the market you're already in. How big could this grow to, do you think? What's the potential demand there?
Just in Tampa, we could probably you could probably double it to get it to 5 million just on hot side. Just on hot side. Yep, just on hot side. Adding in the PMs, maybe even adding some more installation services, like doing more installs, and then doing the ASAs for the manufacturers. No reason why we can't have anywhere from 12 to 15 techs on the just on the hot side alone.
Yeah.
That's and it might even be a little more than that, to be honest. But that's just me being, not
conservative.
Conservative, not shooting for the moon.
And Brian, how have you felt about the technical aspects of the business? Have you learned stuff? Do you just kind of pick up what you pick up, or have you made an effort to learn more actively than that?
I didn't want to, and that's the one great thing about this is that you typically gravitate to what you're good at. And I didn't want to become a good technician, because then I want to go out there and tinker with stuff and mess with stuff. And that's kind of what I did in IT, right? I had an IT background, so anytime there was an issue or something new, I was tinkering on the IT side and maybe not spending as much time growing the business. So I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to know enough to be dangerous, to have conversations with customers and to sound intelligent on the topic, right? So I've picked up on a bunch of stuff, over the last, almost year and a half now. And I know more about fryers than I ever thought I would, and commercial kitchen equipment, but it's enough to carry a conversation with those that are writing the checks, which is the important part.
And you've picked up enough, you don't need to keep studying the subject matter. At this point, no. It's all about building a business. You can focus on building a business.
Yep.
Brian, anything that you share with the students at SM Boot that is either a good story or key learning that I haven't pulled out of you?
So at SM Boot, it's more about the deal process and how to get through that deal process. So I think making sure your deal team's in place, making sure you got the right people in place. If you do need to go find investors, make sure you at least start having conversations with those people. Even if you don't need investors, that doesn't mean you shouldn't reach out and have conversations with that group of individuals, because they can provide so much value to you for free. And if you act, the biggest problem with all this is ego. So if you can put your ego aside and act ignorant about a subject and ask for help, people will give you the help. People are more than willing to provide you with insights and help and their knowledge if you just are humble enough to ask those questions. So you may not need the capital, but it doesn't mean you can't have a valuable conversation with somebody that can provide you capital, because you never know what deal might fall in your lap. And then you might have to pick up that phone and say, hey man, I got this great deal that just came from this broker. It's not on the market yet, but I don't have enough capital to fund it myself. Are you interested? Guess what? You already had the conversation with the investor. They know who you are, right? They have an idea of what you're looking for, what you're all about. It makes the conversation so much easier. And that's with anything. And that's with any of those, attorney, the Q of E person. Like, you need to be on the phone talking to as much people as possible. Keep it short. Don't waste their time, but just let them know who you are and what you're trying to do. And it'll carry you a long way.
Well, perfect segue to my closing here, Brian. How can people reach out to you? How do you like that they do that?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not as active on Twitter as I used to be. I was on Twitter. I had an idea of really charting my journey on Twitter, but time just, I just don't have the time to then go on there and chart my journey like I would have liked to. But anyways, they can reach out to me. They can find me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. Happy to help, as much as I can, or provide any insight. Again, that's kind of at my core, man. I can't say no to people if they ask.
Well, what a great quality, Brian. So I'm sure some people listening will take you up on that. Sounds like you're giving that to your techs. So congratulations on your acquisition and what you're building, and look forward to your updates.
Awesome. I appreciate you, Will. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Brian. Hope you enjoyed that interview. Don't forget to subscribe to the Acquiring Minds newsletter. We send an email for every episode with an introduction to the interview, a link to the video version on YouTube, and soon, key takeaways, numbers, and more essentials from the interview for those of you who don't have time to listen or watch it. Subscribe at acquiringminds.co. You'll also find all our webinars there on the website, both those we have coming up and recordings of past webinars. At this point, there are over 30 webinar recordings, a wealth of information on all the technical nitty-gritty of buying a business. acquiringminds.co.